My name is Mary Kay Williams, and I am 31 years old. I'm sitting in my empty apartment with wedding invitations piled in the trash, feeling oddly free. And if you had asked me 2 weeks ago how I thought my life would look right now, I would have described something completely different. The wedding was supposed to be in 4 months. There was a seating chart half finished on my laptop, a vendor spreadsheet color coded like I was trying to organize chaos into certainty, and a dress hanging in the closet that I had stopped looking at because it made everything feel too real. Now there's no wedding, no fiancé, and the part that shocks me the most is that I'm actually good with it. I'd been with Delaney for 4 years, engaged for one, and I truly thought I knew her. That's the classic mistake, right? Thinking time equals truth. 2 Fridays ago, she sat me down for what she called a serious talk. I thought it would be wedding stress, a vendor issue, her mom being difficult, something normal. Instead, she took a slow breath, put her hands over mine like she was about to deliver a diagnosis, and said she'd been doing a lot of thinking about us, about marriage, about what she needed to be fulfilled. Delaney loved dramatic pauses. She liked letting silence stretch until you started filling it in for her, until you started preparing to compromise before she even said what she wanted. I waited. She looked at me with that calm expression that always meant she'd already decided and was just walking me to the conclusion. I want an open relationship, she said. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Come again. An open relationship, she repeated, like she was saying she wanted to try a new restaurant. Ethical non-monogamy. It's very common now, very healthy for modern couples. Delaney, I said, and I could hear my voice trying to stay level. Our wedding is in 4 months. She leaned forward, squeezed my hands, and smiled like this was exactly the point. Before we commit to forever, I need to know I won't feel trapped, restricted. I need freedom to explore connections, if they arise naturally. So you want to date other people, I said. We would have the freedom to date other people, she corrected quickly, if the opportunity presents itself. It's not about actively seeking it out, just being open to life's possibilities. I pulled my hands back. The warmth of her touch suddenly felt like strategy. And if I say no? Her face hardened so fast it was almost impressive. Then there's no wedding. I can't marry someone who wants to control me. Control her by wanting monogamy in our marriage. I stared at her, trying to understand how she could twist something so basic into something sinister. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. Either we open our relationship or you're calling off the wedding. I need to know you respect my autonomy, she said, like she'd practiced the sentence. Here's the thing. Delaney had been getting into these self-discovery podcasts lately, the kind where influencers talk about expanding your consciousness and not limiting your potential. She joined a women's empowerment group that met on Thursdays. Suddenly, she was using phrases like ethical non-monogamy and relationship anarchy, and she would say them with this proud little smile like vocabulary alone made her evolved. And then she mentioned Astrid. Astrid was a friend from that group who had what she called an open marriage, and Delaney talked about her the way people talk about someone they secretly want to become. Astrid was always bragging about her connections, always implying that anyone who wanted commitment was insecure and unenlightened. Delaney hung on every word. It had started showing up in our conversations in small ways. Little comments about jealousy being possessive, little jokes about how marriage was just a social construct. I didn't realize those were warning lights until the whole dashboard lit up at once. So this is about Astrid, I said. This is about me, Delaney snapped, eyes flashing. About what I need. God, Mary, try to evolve a little. 4 years, deposits paid, families already invited, and she drops this ultimatum 2 Fridays before we were supposed to finalize catering. I sat there processing the way you process a car accident you haven't fully seen yet, like you're still waiting for your brain to catch up to reality. Then I watched her expression shift into something almost eager, like she was already picturing herself winning. Okay, I said finally. Her face lit up. Really? Oh, babe, I knew you'd understand. We'll have an open relationship, I continued. Starting now, both of us. Equal opportunity. She beamed so hard it looked like relief. Yes, exactly. Then she hesitated, and her voice changed just slightly, the way it did when she was trying to steer without appearing to. Though, I mean, you're so busy with work, and you're not really the type to, But yes, theoretically, both of us. Theoretically. Meaning she thought I'd sit home while she explored whatever she'd already been lining up. That's when something in me went quiet and sharp at the same time. Sounds fair, I said. That night, after she fell asleep like a woman who'd just gotten everything she wanted, I opened my laptop and updated my dormant dating profiles. It felt surreal, like I was playing a role in someone else's life. But if we were playing this game, then we were both playing. I didn't message anyone yet. I just set things up, adjusted photos, filled out prompts, watched the app refresh with people I hadn't thought about in years. The next morning, Delaney went to brunch with her empowerment group. She wore a new outfit she'd bought for confidence, kissed me on the cheek like we were stronger than ever, and left humming like the world was full of doors only she had the right to open. I went to the gym, put my headphones in, tried to sweat out the strange buzzing in my veins. That's where I saw Chloe. Chloe was one of Delaney's friends, 28, someone I'd always gotten along with. She told Delaney once that she was lucky to find someone stable, and at the time it had sounded like a compliment. Now I realized it might have been a warning. "Hey, Chloe," I said between sets. "Mary," she smiled. "How's wedding planning?" I should have lied. I should have kept it private. But something about the way she asked, casual and warm, made me want to tell the truth just to hear it out loud. I explained the situation. Her eyes widened in a way that didn't look like surprise so much as recognition. "She did what?" Chloe said quietly. 2 months before your wedding." 4 months, I corrected automatically. "But yeah, we're open now, both of us." Chloe stared like she was trying to decide if she should say what she was thinking. Wow. How do you feel about that?" "Exploring my options," I said. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I added, "Actually, do you want to grab coffee after this? Catch up." She hesitated, then smiled in a way that felt real. "You know what? Yeah, let's do it." And in that moment, as she walked away to refill her water bottle, I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not revenge. Possibility. Coffee with Caleb was supposed to be harmless. That's what I told myself on the walk out of the gym, that I was just catching up with one of Derek's friends, that I wasn't doing anything different from what he'd just demanded we both be allowed to do. Caleb was 30, charming in an effortless way, the kind of guy who actually listened instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. He kept asking if I was okay, not in a dramatic way, just quietly, like he could tell something had been cracked open and wasn't going back into place cleanly. I explained the situation in plain words, leaving out the parts that still made my stomach twist. Derek gave me an ultimatum: open relationship or no wedding. Caleb's expression shifted like he had to swallow his first instinct before it came out. He said, "Wait, he did that now, 4 months before your wedding." I nodded. Caleb leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a second like he was trying to find the polite version of what he wanted to say. Then he said, "That's insane." And then, softer, "Are you sure this was your idea too?" That question landed harder than the ultimatum itself, because the truth was, I didn't even know what my idea was yet. All I knew was that I refused to be the only one paying the emotional cost of Derek's growth. So I told Caleb the truth. I said, "I'm exploring my options. I'm being open to life's possibilities." I watched his mouth twitch at my phrasing, like he caught the borrowed language. Then he smiled and said, "Okay, if you're going to do this, at least do it with someone who doesn't treat you like a backup plan." Coffee turned into lunch without either of us naming it. Lunch turned into walking through the farmer's market, the air cold enough to make us stand closer without it feeling forced. He bought me those tiny donuts covered in cinnamon and pretended it was a major romantic gesture, and I laughed more than I expected to. At one point, he posted a picture of our coffee cups and my hand in the corner of the frame, captioned, "Great catching up with an old friend." No hearts, no flirtation in words, just visibility. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Miles, one of Derek's book club friends, 32, someone I'd met at game nights and birthdays. He wrote, "Hey, saw you embracing new relationship dynamics. Good for you. Drink sometime." It was casual, almost too casual, like he already knew the terms of the new reality before I did. I stared at the message, felt my pulse kick up, then remembered Derek's face when he said autonomy. Remembered the way he said it like a weapon. So I said yes. Sunday night, I met Miles for drinks. He was in the middle of a breakup, and the conversation slid naturally into commiseration. He talked, I listened, he asked questions back, actual questions, not the kind Derek asked when he wanted a specific answer. Miles posted a story of our cocktails and tagged me. Again, nothing explicit. Just proof I existed in a world that didn't orbit Derek. By Sunday night, I'd scheduled dinner with Parker, 29, one of Derek's work friends who'd always been a little too charming at parties, the kind of man who stood close and made eye contact, like he knew exactly what he was doing. Parker was direct in a way that made me feel both seen and cautious. He said, "I don't want to step on anything messy, but I've always liked you. If Derek opened the door, I'm not going to pretend I don't want to walk through it." I told him I appreciated the honesty, and I hated how rare that felt. Monday morning, my apartment turned into a war zone without anyone else stepping inside it. It started at 7 a.m. I was making breakfast when Derek stormed into the kitchen with his phone in his hand like it was evidence in a trial. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. He shoved the screen toward my face. "Caleb's story, us laughing at the farmer's market." "Coffee with a friend," I said, flipping eggs like my hands weren't shaking. "And this?" "Miles's cocktail story. Drinks with a friend." And then a message from someone at the restaurant tagging Parker's dinner photo with me in the background. Derek's jaw tightened. He actually stamped his foot once, a sharp little motion that didn't match his grown man anger. "What are you doing?" I turned and looked at him, spatula in my hand, and said, "Exploring connections. Being open to life's possibilities. You know, like we agreed." His expression twisted. "We didn't agree to this." "To what, Derek?" "To dating," he said, like the word tasted disgusting coming out of his mouth. "That's literally what an open relationship is," I said, "unless you meant something else." His eyes flashed. "Not with my friends." Ah, there it was. The real rule he thought he didn't have to say out loud because it lived in his head like a law of nature. "Your friends are off limits," I repeated slowly. "Was that in the rules we didn't establish? Because you didn't establish any." "It's obvious," he shot back. "Everyone knows you don't date your partner's friends." "Everyone," I echoed, keeping my voice calm on purpose. "Like Astrid. Didn't she date her boyfriend's coworker?" Derek's face flushed. "That's different." "How?" "Because it is, Michaela," he snapped, then caught himself like he realized he'd used the wrong name, the wrong tone, the wrong mask. "You're doing this to hurt me." "I'm doing this because you demanded an open relationship," I said. "These men reached out to me. We're all adults. We're all operating in the relationship structure you insisted on. So what's the problem?" "The problem is you're being vindictive," he said, and his voice cracked right at the end like anger was sliding into panic. "I'm being open to possibilities like you wanted," I said, and I watched him realize he couldn't argue without exposing himself. He grabbed his phone and started typing furiously. "I'm calling Caleb right now. This is unacceptable." "Cool," I said. "I'm having breakfast with him tomorrow. You can talk to him then." Derek froze. "What?" "Yeah," I said, tasting the power in how simple it was. "We really connected. Might be something there." "You can't be serious." "Dead serious," I said. "This open thing. Great idea. It's really opened my eyes to what's out there." He stormed out, but the text started immediately. "We need to talk about boundaries. This isn't what I meant. You're purposely misunderstanding. Caleb is off limits. Answer me." "This is manipulation." I responded once from work, keeping it light and open, using his own language like a mirror. "I'm following your communication style, exploring, growing, not limiting my potential." That afternoon, my friend Keith called laughing so hard I could barely understand him. "Dude, Derek is losing his mind in the group chat. What did you do?" I told him I took Derek up on his open relationship offer with Derek's friends. "They reached out to me." Keith wheezed and said, "She's saying you're weaponizing polyamory." I said, "I'm just evolving, Keith. Growing." Keith said, "You're evil, and I love it." That night, Derek came home with rules. Actual printed rules. He slapped the pages on the counter like he was presenting a contract. 1, no dating each other's friends. 2, no posting on social media. 3, no dates on weekends reserved for primary partner. 4, must approve all dates in advance. 5, veto power over any connection. "These are standard," he said. "Standard where?" I asked, already knowing the answer. He hesitated. "From the Ethical Non-Monogamy Foundation." I stared at him. I Googled it later. No such thing existed. "Derek, you can't make up rules after the fact," I said. "You said open relationship or no wedding." I agreed. "Now you want to control who I see and when." "It's about respect," he snapped, and his eyes were too bright. "Respect," I repeated. "You threatened our wedding to get your way. Where was respect then?" "I was being honest about my needs," he said quickly, like he'd practiced that too. "And I'm being honest about mine," I said. "I need to explore these connections." "Isn't that what you said? Don't you respect my autonomy?" His hands clenched around the papers. This isn't how it's supposed to work. How is it supposed to work, Derek? You date other women while I sit home. No, he said too fast. I mean, you're supposed to be more selective. I am being selective, I said. And I didn't even have to fake calm anymore. I'm selecting people I connect with. And it's interesting, Derek, because you have good taste in friends. You surround yourself with decent men. That's why you're panicking. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't have a sentence that didn't expose what he'd been counting on. And that was when I understood something I hadn't fully admitted yet. This wasn't about freedom. It was about Derek expecting a one-way door. The next morning, I got a text from Caleb. Derek called me screaming for 20 minutes. Still on for breakfast. I stared at the screen and felt the shape of what was coming. I replied, "If you're comfortable, no pressure." Caleb wrote back, "Oh, I'm coming." This is the most interesting thing to happen all year. And I had a feeling that breakfast was going to tell me exactly what Derek had been planning long before he ever sat me down with that ultimatum. Breakfast with Caleb stripped the last layer of denial away. We sat in a corner booth, sunlight cutting across the table, and before the food even arrived, he leaned forward and said, "I need to tell you something, because whatever Daniel's doing right now isn't coming from nowhere." Hearing my fiancé's name spoken that way, calm and unprotected, made my stomach tighten. Caleb told me Daniel had been talking about opening the relationship for months in their circle, framing it like a future plan that just needed the right timing. He'd joked that I was stable, trusting, not the jealous type, that I'd come around if it was packaged as growth. Caleb hesitated, then added that Daniel had already been texting a woman from his pottery class, someone younger, artsy, all vague compliments and late-night messages disguised as creativity. He said Daniel kept repeating that once I agreed, everything would be fine, that I'd be grateful he still wanted to marry me. I sat there listening, feeling something inside me go very still. Not shock, recognition. It wasn't that Daniel wanted an open relationship, it was that he wanted permission. Permission to cross lines he'd already been leaning toward. Permission without consequences. Caleb showed me screenshots from their group chat. Daniel's words in black and white, joking about how easy I'd be to convince, how I wouldn't really date anyone anyway. That was the moment the humiliation fully landed, not because of the woman from pottery class, but because of how confidently he'd underestimated me. When I got home, Daniel was waiting with a new strategy. The anger had been replaced with affection, candles lit, dinner cooking, wearing the dress I'd bought him last anniversary. "Hey, babe," he said softly, like the last few days hadn't happened. "I thought we could have a romantic night, just us." I set my bag down and told him I couldn't, that I had plans to meet Parker for trivia night. For half a second the mask slipped, irritation flashing across his face before he smoothed it back into a smile. "Maybe after," he said. I told him not to wait up. That's when the manipulation turned sharper. He said we were losing focus on us, that this wasn't how it was supposed to work, that my growth was somehow supposed to pause while his expanded. He called me safe, predictable, boring, then flinched like he'd said something too close to the truth. I didn't accuse him. I didn't raise my voice. I showed him the screenshots Caleb had sent, his own words about the pottery class woman, about lining things up before asking me. The silence that followed was clean and devastating. He denied it at first, then reframed it, saying he'd just been honest instead of cheating, that attraction wasn't a crime. I asked him if honesty included ultimatums. He cried, not the quiet kind, but angry, frustrated tears, the kind that come when control slips away. He told me I was ruining everything, that I was twisting his intentions, that I was being influenced by his friends. I told him I was finally seeing clearly, that the open relationship wasn't the problem. The problem was that he only wanted it open in one direction. By Thursday morning, my phone was flooded with messages, screenshots Daniel had sent to his friends, old complaints taken out of context, attempts to paint Caleb, Miles, and Parker as manipulative people who were turning me against him. I warned them, sent a simple message telling them what he was doing. Their responses were immediate, furious, unified. That night we met for drinks, not as dates, but as people comparing notes. They told me stories about Daniel I'd never heard, patterns I'd ignored, entitlement disguised as charm. And somewhere between the second round and the truth finally settling, I realized the wedding wasn't something I needed to fix or salvage. It was something I needed to end. By Friday morning, I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. That was the difference Daniel couldn't understand. Anger invites negotiation. Clarity doesn't. I woke up early, made coffee, opened my laptop, and started making calls. Venue first. Partially refundable. Catering next. Deposit gone, but the coordinator was understanding in that calm, professional way that tells you she's seen worse. Photographer kept half. Dress shop let me resell the gown. Every call felt surgical, not dramatic, efficient. Like I was closing accounts on a life that no longer belonged to me. Daniel didn't know yet. He was at his empowerment breakfast with Astrid, the open relationship guru who talked about autonomy like it was a club membership. Perfect timing. I packed my things quietly, my clothes, my records, my grandmother's china. Daniel had always hated because it wasn't minimalist. I left my key on the counter and one printed page beside it. No handwriting, no emotion leaking through the font. Daniel, you were right. We shouldn't restrict ourselves or our potential. After exploring the open relationship you insisted on, I've realized my potential doesn't include marrying someone who uses threats to get their way. The wedding is canceled. Vendors have been notified. You wanted freedom to explore connections with the woman from pottery class. You have it permanently. I'll be staying with Keith while we sort out the apartment. My lawyer will contact you about recovering wedding deposits you didn't contribute to. Thank you for opening my eyes to what I really want in a partner. Someone who doesn't need ultimatums to communicate their needs. I added a postscript because it felt honest, not cruel. Your friends are good people. I see why you were so upset. I connected with them. They deserve better too. I was at Keith's when the calls started, 52 of them. I didn't answer a single one, but the texts came in waves, cycling through disbelief, rage, bargaining, and revisionist history. This is a joke, right? You can't cancel our wedding without talking to me. I called the venues and they said you already canceled. You're having a breakdown. Come home so we can talk. This is abusive behavior. I'm calling your mother. Your mom says she understands completely. That one made me pause, then smile. Then the pivot. The pottery guy means nothing to me. We can be monogamous. I deleted his number. Please come home. We've invested 4 years. You're throwing away our life over a miscommunication. I booked couples counseling, Tuesday at 3. Please. The word please showed up like a spell he thought might work if he said it often enough. Keith read over my shoulder, shaking his head. Gaslighting 109, he said. Reality is whatever keeps him the victim. Saturday afternoon, he escalated. He started calling my family, telling them I was having a mental breakdown, that predatory men had brainwashed me, that I needed an intervention. My mom called me laughing so hard she had to catch her breath. Honey, Daniel just told me you're in a cult. I asked which one. She said, the cult of common sense. Then she added something I didn't expect. I never liked him. I told her she always said he was lovely. She said, I said he seemed lovely. Different thing. Your father and I had a bet on how long it would last. I asked why she hadn't said anything. She asked if I would have listened. Fair point. Sunday brought the flying monkeys. The empowerment group lit up my inbox. Astrid sent a novel about how I was weaponizing polyamory and abusing the sacred trust of ethical non-monogamy. I replied once. You gave me an ultimatum. I accepted. Then you got mad when I actually participated. That's not ethical anything. That's manipulation. She blocked me. I slept better that night. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. The pottery guy. Miles sent me screenshots. Daniel had shown up at the studio declaring he was finally free to explore their connection. The response, what? I have a girlfriend. Turns out all those flirty interactions were just friendliness. Daniel had built an entire fantasy relationship in his head and tried to blow up our wedding for it. According to Miles, Daniel melted down in the studio, yelling about mixed signals. Creating such a scene, the instructor escorted him out and banned him from class. I didn't feel smug, I felt relieved. The truth had a way of finishing the work I started. By Wednesday, the chaos had condensed into something almost predictable. Daniel sent a formal email, not a text, not a call, an email like he was applying for a second chance he thought he was entitled to. He wrote that he'd had time to reflect. that he acknowledged he perhaps hadn't communicated his needs clearly, and that he was willing to forgive my overreaction so we could move forward together. Forgive. That word sat there like a bad joke. He listed conditions, bullet-pointed and confident. I had to cut contact with Caleb, Miles, and Parker immediately. We would restart wedding planning with a renewed focus. I would apologize to his family for the embarrassment. We would attend couples counseling with a therapist who specialized in male emotional immaturity. I needed to acknowledge my part in the misunderstanding. He ended it with "Love conquers all" and a postscript about apartment scheduling, like we were negotiating custody of furniture instead of the collapse of a relationship. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with one word, evidence, then replied to Daniel with a single sentence, no. His response was immediate. No? That's all you have to say? I answered, yes. He told me this wasn't a joke. I told him neither was his ultimatum. He accused me of being influenced, of choosing strangers over him, of throwing away 4 years over something he didn't even want. That last part actually made me laugh out loud. Didn't even want it. The open relationship he'd threatened our wedding over, the autonomy he'd demanded, the freedom he'd already been planning to use. He told me I'd regret this when I was alone. I told him I'd rather be alone than controlled. That was the last real conversation we ever had. The fallout was almost theatrical. He moved back in with his parents and started posting about toxic relationships, about surviving narcissistic abuse, about how strong men get punished for being honest. His empowerment circle reshuffled, some quietly disappearing, others doubling down. Astrid blocked me everywhere, a small mercy. Meanwhile, his friends, former friends, were unexpectedly kind. We had dinner one night, all of us, no flirting, no tension, just laughter and shared disbelief. They joked that Daniel was telling people I was dating all 3 of them at once, a weird reverse harem fantasy where he was somehow still the victim. The truth was simpler. We were just people who realized we'd tolerated the same behavior for too long. As for me, I stayed with Keith while I looked for a new apartment. I went back to the gym. I slept better than I had in years. Work picked up. I didn't date anyone seriously. I didn't need to. Turns out after 4 years of walking on eggshells, being told what growth should look like, I needed time to remember who I was without negotiating my worth. The wedding would have been next month. Instead, I booked a solo hiking trip through Iceland, something I'd always wanted to do, but Daniel called boring nature stuff. He texted me once, just one line, "I hope you're happy." And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. I replied honestly, not to him, but to myself. I am. Funny how that happens when you stop letting someone hold your life hostage under the guise of love, growth, or autonomy. When someone shows you who they are, especially when they demand freedom through threats, believe them. And sometimes the thing that feels like the end of your life is actually the moment you get it back.